everybody, can I get your attention please? Thank you. Can you all hear? Yeah. So I'd just like to welcome you all and thank everybody very much for coming today. It is really fantastic to see so many people coming here to make MECFS visible in the heart of Manchester. I particularly want to thank those of you with ME for coming today, for making the conscious choice to come in and attend, even though it may come at a considerable cost. For most people, a trip into Manchester would be a walk in the park, but I realise for some of you it's more like a marathon that could take days or even weeks to recover from. So who am I? Why am I standing here? And what are we going to be doing today? I'm Becky, the person who had the crazy idea to stage a Millions Missing event in Manchester. My story will be very familiar because it's a classic tale of ME. Like many of you, I once led a full and active life. Back in 2008, I worked full-time. I was studying for my master's part-time. I went to the gym 4 times a week. I captained the Cheshire women's rugby team, and I had a very hectic and often a boozy social life. In the summer of 2008, I got a virus. While I recovered from the initial illness, my health was not the same. Work became a mammoth task. I had to sleep when I got home so I could go to rugby training. After a match, I would collapse, sleeping for hours and waking feeling unrefreshed. My symptoms worsened. I got a rash all over my body. I was constantly tired. I had a headache from the moment I woke up to the time I fell asleep. As my health deteriorated, I had to give up sport. I realised my body would no longer do what I was asking of it, and something was seriously wrong. It took a year for me to be properly diagnosed, during which time my well-being continued to worsen. 3 years on from the initial virus, and I was still working but barely coping. I had over 38 different symptoms, including flu symptoms, stabbing pain, cystitis, IBS, significant cognitive impairment, fainting, vertigo, headaches, muscle spasms, palpitations. As many of you here will know, the symptoms of ME are many and varied, and these are just some of the invisible manifestations of this cruel disease. As my symptoms mounted, my quality of life diminished. At the worst point, my life became an existence. I couldn't read because my brain struggled to comprehend the words on the page. Being out in public was just too much to bear. I could rarely walk more than 100 yards without needing to stop, and I dragged my feet along the ground as I was too weak to lift them. Going online was impossible as the screen was too bright. Texting was too painful for my hands. And phone calls weren't possible as I couldn't follow what people were saying. And for about 6 weeks, I could barely string a sentence together. This was my absolute rock bottom, trapped by my own body with no way forwards. It was at this point that I considered suicide as a genuine means of breaking out of this hellish existence. However, I said to myself, Becky, do you want to sink or do you want to swim? And I thought, however hard, swim it is. So began the slow, painfully slow, crawl to recovery. Every day felt like I was dragging my reluctant body along by the tips of my fingers until I could collapse into bed once more. When your GP knows nothing about your illness, you must become your own expert. I read everything I could and gradually found ways to help my body heal itself. 7 years on from my lowest point, I found a way to adjust my life to the level of health that I feel grateful to have. I now work for myself part-time from home. I'm able to take my dog for a walk most days, and better yet, I'm starting to socialise. I can even have a drink or two every now and again. Yet there are still so many things I cannot do, and so many ways I have to restrict my life. Noise, an increased heart rate, perfume. Everything must be monitored for the impact it's having on my body to avoid triggering symptoms. For instance, most people go to the hairdressers for a pamper. Whereas I have to come home and promptly re-wash my hair to get rid of the chemicals, otherwise my throat swells up, I can't think properly, and I start to become very tired. Come Friday night, even laughing too loudly or energetically can trigger a flare-up. And I'm painfully aware that I am one of the very few lucky ones who has some semblance of a normal life. And there are still so many unanswered questions. Can I have a baby without causing a relapse? Is ME genetic? Will I ever be able to exercise again? In 2018, we should have the answers to these questions, but we don't. I know that my story will sound familiar to very many of you, because much of it is your story too. And it's the story of 17 to 20 million people worldwide, 250,000 of them in the UK, and 9,000 right here in Greater Manchester. There are no diagnostic tests or effective NHS-approved treatments. GPs receive little to no training about the disease and have no answers for patients suffering. 25% of us cannot leave our beds or homes. 75% of us are unable to work. People die from this disease. Too many of us are forced to live our lives without a clear plan for treatment or a cure. Yet even though this disease has been around for 40 years or more, nothing is done for ME. We wear red ribbons to raise awareness of HIV. We run marathons to raise funds for diabetes research, and we shave our heads in sympathy with cancer sufferers. And of course, all these things are really worthwhile. So why not add ME to the list? We need real investments in research to guarantee that people who suffer from this disease will no longer be relegated to the shadows and forced to live half a life. That's why we're calling on our MPs to dramatically increase funding into biomedical ME research and treatment to help alleviate the millions currently missing from their lives. That's why we're asking you to please sign our petition, which is available on one of the flyers that we'll be handing out today. So I expect you're wondering what we've got in store for you today. I know we've kicked off a little bit late, but with ME, that's kind of par for the course. So here's a quick rundown. And by the way, I'm expecting you to remember all of this because I've forgotten the board that I had it all written down on. So good luck with your brain fog. We will have face painting and cakes already on offer by the gazebo. And in the next hour, we'll have Kat Gillett providing legal advice on benefit claims for anybody who's had problems with PIP, ESA. She'll be talking to you. She is only available for the next hour, so please do track her down quickly if you'd like to speak to her. Just after I finish speaking, we'll be kicking off with a song called Smile, performed by John Reed. And John, I've forgotten the name of the other guys. The Lewinsky's. Sorry, I did write it down, but on the wrong sheet. And then we'll be having a speech from Dr. Hild later on. We're not quite sure what time he's going to arrive, but that will be happening later. And for anybody who wants to take to the microphone, we will be running 2 open mic sessions. So if you want to share your story, if you've got something to say, if you want to read out one of the poems that we've got printed, provided by Bill Clayton of the York ME Group, just come and shout and I've got those printed out. And we'll also have a speech later on today from Gail Sumner from the Perrin Clinic, who'll be telling us about some of the results that they've achieved. And we'll have another open mic session. And finally, towards the end of the day, we'll be doing a roll call of those who died from ME/CFS to recognise the fact that this is a serious illness and not one to be ignored. I'm also very conscious of the thousands of Manchester residents who are bed or housebound and cannot make this event. So we've got some Facebook Live broadcasts going on, so those of you who are missing can still participate from home. So before I close, this event has only been possible due to the contributions of a lot of people who have come forward to offer their time and in many cases limited energy. So my thanks goes out to Kirsty Edgson, Carol Charles and Alyssa Bryant, Catherine Saunders, John Reed and the Lewinsky's, Kat Gillett, Sue and Kate Hewson, Tom Howarth, and everybody who has sent in, bought down shoes today or completed online labels, and every single person who's donated to help make this event possible and pay for things like the banners, the flyers, the posters that you see. So finally, I hope you all enjoyed today. Do feel free to hand out some of the flyers that we've got, they're just here, to anyone who shows passing interest. I'd ask that any members of the press are directed to either myself, Kirsty Edgson, wherever Kirsty is, there, Catherine, wherever Catherine is, there. And it is a rare day out for many of us, so for those of you who need to pace, please do pace. We've got a sun lounger if you need a rest. And last but not least, please do enjoy yourselves.